Welcome to the Hope for the Animals podcast, a project of compassionate living. I'm your host, Hope Bohannic, and before we get into our interview today, I wanted to talk about something that I heard in the news recently. I think that we can say, for the most part, that we are moving in the right direction on animal issues on a societal level, especially around other than food issues like animals in entertainment, circuses, fur, these kinds of animal use issues. I think we're seeing a reduction, a significant reduction in most of these kinds of use, seeing progress in how we view animals. That's really evolving. But it's heartbreaking when we see a new use for animals, a new issue of animal use and abuse. And recently I saw that pig organ transplants are going to human trials. So, for a while now, there has been medical experimentation on pigs who are bred and genetically altered. They use gene editing to alter these pigs so their organs can be cut out. I'm not going to use the euphemism that they use, which is harvest. The pigs are killed, their organs are cut out and transplanted into human patients who need new organs. It's called xenotransplantation. And reading this article, I realized that this is a form of speciesism. Speciesism is not only perceived human superiority, humans feeling that they are uh, superior and more important than any other being on the planet. It's also categorizing animals according to their use to us, right? Their perceived value to us as a commodity. We would never feel that it's okay to use a dog or a cat this way, but a pig has a different arbitrary category of use in our society, in our culture, for food, and now apparently for organs, even though we know they have the same capacity for pain, for joy, for emotion as our dogs and cats, as we do. So their use in this way is speciesist. But using animals in medical procedures and experimentation is not new. When I was much younger in my 20s, I burned my foot really badly. I had third-degree burns on the top of my foot, and I had to have surgery. And they offered either to graft skin from another part of my body, and put it on my foot, or I could use pig skin. And they encouraged me to use the pig skin because the grafting would be painful and leave a scar. I was shocked, and I, of course, opted for the grafting of my own body after giving them an earful about how we shouldn't be using animals in that way. But this xenotransplantation is something new, doing more major surgery for organ transplants, kidneys, hearts, other organs. And these are more life-threatening situations. I would really understand someone wanting to save their loved one's life if there was no other option, if that was the only option that they had. But taking one sentient being's life from them to save another sentient being, it's not a choice we should have to make. If we saw non-human animals as worthy of their own lives, as equally deserving of life and freedom, we would have never gone down this road in the first place. We would have put our energy and resources and research into artificial organs or some other alternatives. This should never have been an ethical option. Just as we would never feel it would be okay to use a dog's organs or another person's organs for this human patient. Just the fact that we share organs in common so closely to pigs, and that pigs can match the organs of humans so closely, shouldn't that be reason enough to take pause? They're so much like us. Someone recently pointed out to me that I use the word suffering when I talk about what's happening to animals, when I'm talking about animal agriculture, animals in farming and veganism. I feel that language is so important to how we perceive our world, how we think about animals. And I do say things like we want to relieve the suffering of animals or relieve animal suffering. But he pointed out to me that it's not really about reducing suffering. I mean, that's part of it, but really it's about the use of animals in any form altogether, the commodification of animals. And whenever there's commodification for the use of their bodies, there will be psychological distress, taking their lives away from them. This is beyond suffering. This is detrimental to their existence. And I could see someone arguing that the pigs are comfortable and they put them under anesthesia when operating on them, when they kill them and take their organs, and that they don't suffer. But what kind of a brief life is it for them when they're just a vessel for someone else's organs? Pigs are complex, they're emotional, sentient beings. You can ask any sanctuary helper about the rescued pigs, and most will just light up with love talking about pigs. It breaks my heart to think about them being used in this way. And if these trials are successful, then there will be more and more pigs bred for this purpose. So this is about their very lives, not just suffering. And I agree, I want to make that language shift because it is more about animal use and animal commodification than it is just their suffering. It's bigger than that. And this issue, xenotransplantation, it's a really tough one. I mean, we could try to fight it, try to have petitions and campaigns against it. I think the only really compassionate way to deal with this is to change our culture around how we view animals, to acknowledge and expose speciesism, to educate on speciesism, to see farmed animals and all animals with respect, to view them with respect, to protect them, to recognize their sentience, their desire for life and freedom, and embrace them in our circle of compassion so that we wouldn't want to harm them any more than we would a member of our family. We should be embracing all of life, all sentient life, and no one should have to make this choice. So, one of the ways that we can know animals better is through farmed animal sanctuaries. So, let's transition into our interview for today with a dedicated activist, Zoe Novic, who really knows deeply the importance of the human animal connection because she's been immersed in it her whole life. She was raised, grew up on a farmed animal sanctuary, and she's going to be speaking at our upcoming Sonoma County Veg Fest on September 27th. 2025. There's a link to more information in the show notes. I hope you'll join us if you're in Northern California, and I hope you enjoy our conversation. All right, today on the podcast, we have Zoe Novic. She is the executive director of CAPE, the Center for Animal Protection and Education, where she combines her passion for animal advocacy and public health. With a diverse background that includes 2 years in the Peace Corps in Indonesia, a master's in public health, and leadership roles at the Humane League, Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, and Greener by Default, Zoe has expertise in grassroots organizing, public health policy, and advocacy. Welcome to the podcast, Zoe.
Thank you so much, Hope. I'm so happy to be here.
Well, I'm happy to have you. And I invited you on because you're going to be speaking at our upcoming Sonoma County Veg Fest, which we're really glad that you're going to be there. And you haven't come for a while, huh?
Yes, I know I've been out of town for a little while, but I'm so excited to be there. Actually, the last time I was there, it's one of the honestly the most memorable Veg Fest experiences that I've had.
Really?
I've been to a lot of Veg Fests over my years.
Yeah, me too. Go ahead.
It was one of the like sweetest, most communal feeling Veg Fest. It's in this, or I guess it's in a different location this year, but last time I was there, it was at the Luther.
Burbank Center. Yeah.
Yeah, so it was just like a cool space, and everyone was so friendly and helpful, and there's so much going on, and the Sonoma community is also just so sweet and vibrant. I just really remember that Veg Fest as being a standout, really sweet and communal.
Wow. Wow. I'm glad you had such a good time. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because you're down in the Bay Area. You're more in the East Bay. And we have outgrown the Luther Burbank Center. So we're not there anymore. We were just, it was getting to be too much, too crowded, not enough room for all the vendors and all that we wanted to do. So we've moved it to the Santa Rosa Veterans Building, which
That's a
is not as
good,
nice, but we have lots of space.
well, that's a good problem to have to outgrow your space, but I'm sure it still has the same communal feel.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it is a sweet community. Vegans, my husband and I always talk about that we have a lot of friends in different communities. I mean, through his work and through different, things that we do. But boy, we love the vegans. I mean, the vegans, that's who we always come back to as being really the truest friends, right? Is that vegan community.
Yeah, I feel you.
Yeah. So Zoe, we'd love to get to know you a little better, and we'd love to know why and when you went vegan. But I know that you've been a very long time vegan and actually grew up on a sanctuary that you now are the executive director of. So we'll get into all that. But I'm curious if you were born vegan.
Yes. Well, no, I was not raised vegan.
Oh, okay.
I
Okay.
was raised vegetarian,
All right.
which was a little more common at the time, especially in a hippie town like Santa Cruz. I
Yeah.
grew up in the Santa Cruz Mountains and raised by my parents, who were two very active animal rights activists and advocates in the movement. My mom is the co-founder of CAPE, the Center for Animal Protection and Education. And so I grew up at an animal sanctuary. So our home was full of life: dogs, cats, pigs, goats, donkeys, chickens, you name it. And so I was raised with this ethic to respect all life. And I didn't eat animals because I didn't want animals to be harmed. And I was definitely one of those people who thought and said out loud numerous times, well, the cows aren't dying when they, provide their milk, or the chickens don't have to die when they give their eggs.
Mm.
And I just was uneducated about how linked and how cruel the dairy and egg industries are with the meat industry, and how destructive they are to our public health and our planetary health. And so when I got older and I was in high school, I started learning more about the food system and the interrelated relationships of the meat and dairy and egg industries. And I just could not ignore the fact that if I really wanted to live in my values, and I really wanted to live a life that was the least harm to animals and humans and the planet, that I really wanted to commit to veganism and not just vegetarianism. And so luckily, I went home that day and had the full support of my parents. They went vegan along with me, and the rest is history.
Oh, it's great that they recognized and went vegan as well. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah,
Good.
very lucky. I'm a very, very spoiled vegan.
Yes. Yes, you are. That's so true because, so many of us, of course, don't have the support of our families. That's great that you had that. And so, okay, I'm going to put you on the spot here. Have you ever had meat in your mouth? Have you ever eaten meat?
Not that I know of.
Okay.
I'm
Okay.
sure there's been some, As a Peace Corps volunteer in Indonesia, I'm sure there's been something somewhere that I didn't know about,
Right,
some
right.
kind of broth, but not that I know of.
Not consciously. Wow, that's amazing. That I love that. I love that, and I'm meeting more and more of you, young people that were raised vegetarian or vegan and have never ever experienced either animal products or meat in their diet. That's amazing. I love that.
Yeah, yeah, it's very impressive. I also am meeting more and more people, either raised vegan or raised vegetarian, and yeah, it is impressive.
Yeah. Wonderful. So you grew up on this sanctuary surrounded by farmed animals. How did that kind of shape who you are today? And I know that you've come full circle now. You are now the executive director of CAPE. So talk about this journey and how that affected your life.
Yeah, well, as you mentioned, I grew up surrounded by animals, and from a very early age, I was able to develop these friendships and bonds with animals, not just dogs and cats, but all kinds of species, and really learn about all types of animals that not many people or kids ever really get to bond with. When I was 5, we rescued a small hen named Strawberry, and she was my best friend. I try to talk about her in every interview or every presentation that I do because she really is sort of the starting point of, yeah, the starting point of my activism. She's
Mm.
After school, I would come home and hang out with her every day. She would ride in the basket on my bike or perch on my shoulder.
Aw.
And we developed such a strong bond, like most people would develop with their dog or cat. I learned to read her social and emotional cues and learned her favorite snacks. And through Strawberry and the other animals at the sanctuary, I learned just about the power of the human animal bond and connection. When I was in college, I started interning and volunteering with other advocacy groups. I did leafleting, I did protests, I did all kinds of different forms of activism and grassroots organizing, eventually leading me to some more sort of public policy type of roles. And the thing that stood out to me and was actually pointed out to me by someone else was like, wow, a lot of animal advocates don't spend a lot of time with animals or with farm animals
Yeah.
specifically. And I feel so lucky that from a young age and now too, I do get to experience that human animal bond, and I get to spend time with farm animals and animals of all species and really experience that connection. So, after experiencing a number of different roles within the animal advocacy movement, I think through a number of different life circumstances, I really saw the value and realized the value of the community aspect and the sanctuary aspect of the animal advocacy movement. It just happened to be around the time that my mom was looking to retire and trying to figure out how to pass on CAPE, her organization. And I think taking over the family business was never something that I saw myself doing. In fact, throughout my life, at every phase of my life, whenever my mom would ask, "Do you ever see yourself working for CAPE?" I would very emphatically and unwaveringly say, "No, absolutely not." And
Huh.
I'm really glad that I never saw myself taking over Cape because I needed to go out and explore other options, and I needed to go out and like see what else was out there in order to really see the value that Cape provides in order to come back home
Mm, yeah.
really, and
Yeah.
just really recognize the power of that animal sanctuaries have in the movement.
Yeah.
And so I'm really grateful to bring all of my experience and knowledge from all of these other aspects of the movement back to Cape and sort of bring it into a new era now.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'd love to maybe expand on that last thought about the importance of sanctuaries in the vegan movement. I think that they're incredibly important on a number of different levels, right? You see the animals as individuals, you see how they can be outside of the animal agriculture process, seeing them for who they are, who they truly are, is just one of the myriad benefits of sanctuaries. Do you want to talk about how they're just really a critical educational tool?
Yes, I so agree with you. I think what I've come to learn in the last decade, it's so important to have a physical space as an act of resistance where we are actively building the world that we want to see, the world where we are treating the animals and the humans with compassion to create the world that we are proactively caring about. A lot of animal advocacy involves protesting and protest not just like out on the picket lines protesting, but literally trying to negate the world and the policies that are currently in place. But sanctuaries are one of the few places where we are proactively building a place where that we want to see created. Sanctuaries are also a really, really valuable physical space for people to come and, as you said, visit the animals face to face, get to spend time with them, and learn about their individual personalities and their wants and needs. And that is so unique and rare. We've had so many stories of people holding a chicken for the first time in their lives at the Cape Sanctuary, or petting a goat or petting a donkey for the first time in their lives. And that being such a memory for them to hold on to and take home. And it's such a tangible way to provide education for people, both within and outside of the movement. Sanctuaries provide a space for people within the movement. A lot of sanctuaries have the ability to hold events, either for, one day events or team retreats or weddings or, big spaces that allow people to come and sort of just feel at home and in community, which is incredibly valuable. They're both sanctuaries for animals and for people within the movement. And of course, they're educational spaces for the public to come and meet animals and learn about their stories and how animals are treated in the food industry or any, animal exploitation industry. Sanctuaries are also, I think, really undervalued for the work that they do outside of the just physical animal caretaking that they do. A lot of sanctuaries collaborate on legislation. They campaign locally for animal welfare reform. And they do a lot of community building, which is really an intangible, it's hard to qualify the ripple effects of animal sanctuaries. But they're so, so important. And I know they've been kind of undervalued over the last few years. And I've just come to really be a huge advocate and appreciate all animal sanctuaries and all people caring for animals.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I loved what you said about it's the space where we're kind of creating the world we want to be or we want to see.
Mhm.
That's so true. And you're right. The majority of what we do is kind of like negating or trying to stop what is happening to the animals. So it's, a lot of, like you said, protest and trying to change the status quo and the things that are happening. And that can be, I mean, it's not that it's negative. It can be positive, but it is certainly, still in the world that, is exploiting animals. But sanctuaries provide this kind of outside of that space place where animals are safe, where they're cared for, where they're able to express themselves and be their true, individual beings and personalities and all of that. And I love that because, if we can't envision the world that we want to see, then it's hard to get there. Right. And I hadn't ever thought about that sanctuaries are kind of that place, that space of seeing what we want. What we want is these animals to be able to be free, live their lives in peace. And they have that at sanctuaries. So wow, that's just beautiful. I love that.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's just like you said, like the act of protesting or trying to protest the laws or policies in order to create more equality or better treatment, more animal welfare is extremely highly valuable. And like we said, like the sanctuaries provide not only the care and support for the animals, but also for the humans. I think a lot of animal advocacy work can lead to a lot of burnout, a lot of cynicism, a lot
Mm.
of,
Yeah.
yeah, it can tire people out, people working within the movement. And so to be able to come to a place where the animals and the humans are treated the ways that we envision, the ways that we strive to create the world that we want is really, really powerful.
Yeah. 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 Well, and you also mentioned how in recent years sanctuaries have been devalued a bit. And I wanted to kind of touch on that. I know that sanctuaries are kind of struggling now with this influence of effective altruism, different philosophies in the animal advocacy spaces, that especially philanthropy and the funding spaces. Effective altruism, or EA, is kind of been infiltrating that space, and particularly funding with like grants and other funding that's given to animal rights and animal rescue organizations. And EA really focuses on like numbers and data. And you look at the quantity of results rather than the quality of the project. And that's simplifying it, of course, but generally they don't like funding animal sanctuaries. And I have heard horrible stories in the last few years of sanctuaries like losing all their longtime funding because of this shift in philosophy in the animal advocacy movement. And I wondered if you wanted to talk about this a little bit. I think it's something that we should address. I think that we really need to see the value in these places, and we need to be supporting animal sanctuaries with our dollars. So, you want to talk about this a little bit?
Yeah, yeah, gladly. So I think just as a blanket statement, I think that an effective animal advocacy movement needs many different kinds of voices and strategies and all kinds of different funding and funding philosophies. And over the last 10, 15 years, the effective altruist movement has helped to bring lots of attention and lots of funding to shed light on the existential threat of the industrial animal agriculture industry. They really helped to bring a lot of people into the funding space. And so they've done a lot of good. However, I think it becomes really dangerous when a specific funding strategy becomes the single funding strategy or the funding philosophy that dominates. I
Yeah.
think it can distort the mission of the movement and it can silence some of the frontline voices and it can really put the entire ecosystem of our movement at risk. And philanthropy should support and not steer our work. And so effective altruism, with its data and metrics and cost effectiveness, often deprioritizes sanctuaries because they believe that the sanctuaries can't produce clear, quantifiable outcomes, or that they aren't helping enough individuals, the most number of individuals. And rather than tearing down that philosophy, the effective altruism funding philosophy, I would rather point to the effectiveness and the true value of sanctuaries, because I do believe that sanctuaries hold this incredible value, as we've been talking about, that is difficult to quantify. Like, granted, it is hard to quantify the qualitative value of animal sanctuaries, the qualitative value of both animals and humans having a safe physical space to be in, or the qualitative value of the ripple effects of community-based sort of grassroots advocacy. I know that the quantitative versus qualitative arguments is not unique to our animal advocacy movement. Just having studied public health, for example, the quantitative scientific studies are so much more highly valued than the qualitative ones, which is equally as incredibly frustrating, because qualitative work and qualitative data is incredibly valuable, and we should not be valuing one over the other. I think a resilient and powerful movement, our animal advocacy movement, needs many different kinds of funding and voices and strategies. And that, I think, has to include animal sanctuaries.
Yeah. Yeah, fully agreed. We need a variety of approaches, a variety of projects and strategies. And, sanctuaries, I think, should be such a huge part of it. And I like what you said in the beginning, though, that EA, it did bring in a lot of money, which is good. And I also believe that it is important to focus on numbers and data. I don't think we shouldn't look at the data and what works, what doesn't, and effective strategies and all that. Absolutely, we should be looking at all that. And I'm glad that that is happening now more and more in the animal advocacy movement. However, as we were just talking about, data and numbers are not the whole story. There are qualitative aspects to it that just can't be quantified. And looking at, like, okay, so say a funder is going to decide to give money to vegan leaflets because you're reaching, 10,000 people with those vegan leaflets, but oh, there's only been, 200 people that have come to the sanctuary. But what if that one person that came to the sanctuary had such a profound experience meeting the animals, deciding to volunteer there, going vegan, and really being an influence in their community? Whereas someone else who got a vegan leaflet, well, okay, that's one more piece of data that they got, and maybe they'll go vegan and then or maybe they'll toss it in the trash. You just can't, there's things the numbers can tell you, and there's things that they cannot. And to me, the experience of meeting animals, seeing them as they are as individuals, being with them, that is a qualitative experience that goes well beyond a vegan brochure. you know, it's just really hard to funnel it all down to numbers. So I hope that this EA thing, people will start to loosen up and loosen up those restrictions and understand that there are so many different ways to reach people, and that sanctuaries must be supported.
Absolutely. Two things come to mind as you were talking about the leaflet versus sanctuary experience, and both are so valid. And I think that like I said, like we need all types of advocacy strategies. But the famous Maya Angelou quote comes to mind so powerfully in this situation, which is Maya Angelou said, I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. And I think in this context, it relates to people might get a leaflet and it might stay with them for a couple minutes, couple days, who knows. But some of those statistics that are in the leaflet, statistics are like the first thing that people forget. Like, oh, how many animals are killed for in the US each year for food? But one of the experiences that people don't forget is how they felt at an animal sanctuary or how they felt the first time that they pet a pig or whatever it is, like those experiences, like you said, Hope, of meeting an animal, the animals that are normally considered food in our country, is so unique and so rare. And to be able to provide that experience is so critically valuable. And then the other quote that I absolutely love, Cape used to run the Animal Film Festival. And one of the films that we showed a few years ago was called to Rescue. And it's a film by Naomi Call. And it's basically a portrait of a number of different animal sanctuaries throughout the country. It's a really beautiful film if you get a chance to see it. And I'll never forget one of the quotes from an animal caretaker who was talking about one of the pigs that they rescued at the sanctuary. And she was talking about the number of visitors that come to the sanctuary and have these profound experiences that make them change their eating habits or their lifestyle habits. And this caretaker said, I'm not the one that's making that happen or doing this. It's him. And she points to the pig and she's like, it's you. Like you're the one who's creating this change. You're the one who's making them think differently. And
Mm.
it's such a powerful moment in the film. And it's so memorable. And it's true. It's the sanctuaries are so powerful because it's the animals that make people remember them and make them think differently about them and
Yeah.
change ultimately.
Yeah. Yeah. We're a unique movement in that the oppressed are not heard or seen in any context other than sanctuaries, right? I
Yes.
mean, pretty much. Yeah, we can show pictures, we can show video, but really they don't have a voice. And I know we have that, saying of, oh, the voiceless, and they're not voiceless. We know they have their own voices, and they will let you know if they're in pain. They'll let you know if they're happy with their voices. But we have a unique situation where we really can't spotlight them in any way other than, media. But sanctuaries, that's where you can really meet them and actually experience them. And like the quote you said, it's emotion. Emotion is so important in people making change in their life and people being brave and having courage to do something about an oppression or a problem. They've got to have their emotions involved, their emotions stirred, and that's what a sanctuary can do so much more than a leaflet or a website, even though those things are important too.
Yeah.
So yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. This thought is actually just coming to me right now, but I think for some people, seeing a leaflet, having the emotion of outrage, anger, disappointment, having sort of a negative emotion around how animals are treated, that might be a motivating factor to go vegan out of protest. But then for other people, I think having the emotional reaction of like compassion, love, kindness, a more positive emotion might be a more motivating factor of I want this animal to be treated with kindness. I don't want them to die. And so that's why I'm going vegan.
Yeah.
I know there's organizations out there who are studying what are the most effective methods, what are the most effective messages, and so I wonder
Yeah, that's really interesting.
maybe that could be a good quantitative study for a sanctuary.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. No, it's true. And I think what we'll end up finding is that different people are motivated by different things. And you're right. A lot of people, I think, would be motivated possibly more by love, love, compassion, having interaction with these animals and feeling that love and wanting to protect them. Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah.
Interesting thought. Well, Zoe, I wanted to ask you something else. I'm going to change, kind of switch gears here. And I wanted to ask you about your public health connection, because you have a graduate degree in public health and you worked in public health policy and space for a while. And I'm curious about that connection because there are so many connections there. Of course, just, our own health factor in eating animal products, but then there's numerous other things like antibiotic resistance and zoonotic disease, and there's just so many connections there. Avian flu that we're experiencing right now. I'm curious what your experience was with public health and going through that process in school and how you connect it to animal agriculture.
Yeah, yeah, great question. So I originally decided to get my master's in public health because I thought that it would be the most effective way for me to argue why people should stop eating animals. Because, as we know, the animal agriculture industry is a huge threat to public health in all the ways that you just listed and many, many more. And I chose the public health program that I did because shockingly, they were one of the few public health programs that actually acknowledged animal agriculture as a public health threat on their website. And they had a number of different programs and fellowships that were specifically connecting public health and environment and animal agriculture.
What program was it?
It was at Yale.
At Yale? Oh, nice.
Yeah, Yale School of Public Health.
Wow.
And when I got there, I continued to be disappointed. And I guess I shouldn't have been surprised, but I was continually disappointed at the lack of discussion and acknowledgement of the connection between our food system and animal agriculture specifically and public health. And I think that Yale's reputation will survive during these critiques. But yeah, it was a pretty big disappointment. And so I ended up starting my own student interest group called Plant-Based for Public Health. And we were the only public health student group that was tying all of these connections together of animal agriculture, antimicrobial resistance, nutrition related disease, environment, zoonotic disease, all of these things. And happy to say that that student group is still growing strong.
Oh,
But
that's good.
it really opened my eyes to the sort of siloed nature of public health and food system, nutrition reform. I mean, all of these groups are quite there is some overlap. But I really believe that if we can bridge public health with animal advocacy, I think there's a public health strategy or philosophy called One Health, which is the connection between human health, animal welfare, and environmental health. And we had maybe like an hour or two of education about One Health. And I really believe that if we can access the lens of One Health for all public health policies and other, health related policies, then we can start to create a food system and a world where animals and environmental health and human health are treated as really interrelated and interdependent on each other. So my goal with CAPE educational programs, my goal is to really be a bridge between public health and the animal advocacy world because I I really believe that if we can make those connections and maintain that bridge, we can create so much more effective change for our planet, for humans and the animals.
Oh, that's really interesting. The One Health thing or the concept, One Health, was that something that who started that and what was it connected to or what were they talk more about that. That sounded really interesting.
Yeah, yeah. So One Health, I believe, was started in the 90s. It's most commonly referred to when speaking about zoonotic diseases because zoonotic diseases are really, they have to do with diseases that are passed between humans and animals. And there is a rise in zoonotic diseases most frequently when, as we know, the human population has been sort of physically encroaching on spaces that are impacting more and more wildlife. However, in the animal advocacy space, we also know that zoonotic diseases are scarily common and dangerous in our food system, and especially in industrial animal agriculture, where the animals are kept in tiny spaces, more likely to get sick, more likely to pass on illnesses. And that was hardly discussed in my public health program. So, public health as a field really tries to keep humans healthy and tries to keep the public, the human population healthy. And so a lot of times the way that it's framed is we should maintain a healthy environment, healthy planet, and healthy animals in order to keep a healthy human population. So humans are kind of at the top of the pyramid. I obviously take some issue with that because I believe that it's inherently valuable to maintain a healthy and compassionate environment for animals and our planet because it's the right thing to do. And when we have a healthy ecosystem for humans, animals, and the environment, it's better for everyone.
Yeah, very interesting. Yeah, zoonotic diseases are just, it's scary. And I know that avian flu now is really a concern. And, it just amazes me that not more people make the connections, and realize that what we're doing to the animals is causing these things that to be detrimental to our own health and public health. Yeah, it's just very frustrating.
Yeah, it's very frustrating.
Well, Zoe, it's been really wonderful talking to you. I want to ask you our last question. What gives you hope for the future?
Well, we talked about this at the beginning. I don't know if we were recording yet or not, but what gives me hope for the future, it sounds so cheesy, but it's really, really true. I do keep coming back to the people and the community in the animal advocacy movement. I think the people working day to day to save lives, to save animals, to advocate on their behalf, we are such a determined and stubborn and patient movement. We keep fighting and keep coming up against so many barriers in our world, whether it's cultural or political. But we have we have created so much progress for animals in the last 20 years, in the last, 50 years, and it is so impressive. It does give me so much hope to know that there are so many of us fighting every single day to protect animals and to make their lives better. And that is what gives me hope.
Hmm. Yeah, and I might add, coming back to the sanctuaries and how we were talking about sanctuaries, something that gives me hope is that there are so many more sanctuaries now than there were 30 years ago.
Yes.
It's incredible. I moved up to Oregon, to the Eugene, Oregon area, and I couldn't believe how many sanctuaries are up here, and rescues for all kinds of animals, rabbit rescues and rat rescues, and but the farmed animal sanctuaries, they are abundant now, and so I encourage everyone to, support your local sanctuaries, support all sanctuaries. There's a lot of them now, and that's really hopeful too.
Yes, I agree.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for being on, Zoe, and thanks for speaking at the Sonoma County Veg Fest coming up. I'm really excited to hear you there. You're going to be talking about your sanctuary work there. Yeah.
Yes, so excited to be there. So excited to see you there, Hope.
Thank you so much, Zoe. Appreciate you being on.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Hope for the Animals podcast, a project of compassionate living. If you are in the Northern California area, I hope you'll join us for our upcoming Sonoma County Veg Fest on September 27th, 2025. Zoe is going to be one of our speakers. Her presentation is completely different than what we talked about in this interview. She is going to talk about the animals and share stories of the animals that she has rescued and encountered. So that should be an informative and very sweet presentation. The Sonoma County Veg Fest is held at the Santa Rosa Veterans Building in Santa Rosa, California, 11 to 4 on Saturday, September 27th. I hope you can join us if you're in the area. We'll have a link in the show notes to more information and how you can get tickets. And if you're not in the area or wherever you are, support your local animal sanctuaries. They need our support, your volunteer time, your donation dollars. And you can also learn how to support CAPE, the Center for Animal Protection and Education, in the show notes. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Join Zoe and I at the Sonoma County Veg Fest if you can. And please live vegan.